Hello, my name is Marianne and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you to Recovery in Action, Life on Life's Terms. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you're all here, especially newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. This is an open Big Book step study meeting where we discuss the 12 steps of recovery as they're written in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, with the focus on their application in everyday life and recovery. This is the first session of the sixth cycle of the workshop that was presented on April 27th, 2024, where we completed the introduction to the Big Book and started at the unmanageability in our lives and the first step. Next week, we'll continue with the first step. If you would like to contribute to the seventh tradition, you may do so using the QR codes displayed. Contributions are applied towards the group's expenses and support our service offices. Recordings of the workshop are available, and if you would like to be placed on the distribution list, please send an email to recoveryinaction462@gmail.com to receive the links. These links are unlisted and not public. I request that you not share them at the public level or post on any social media sites. The workshop typically begins with a brief meditation in which an inspirational music video is played. Because of copyright restrictions, it cannot be on the video. However, a link is provided, and I suggest you take a minute, view the video, and take a brief meditation for yourself before you begin the workshop. As the recording begins, the workshop is already in session. Feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions or require my assistance further. I hope you enjoy the workshop. Another custom of this group is to start the workshop by saying the full version of the Serenity Prayer. We're all familiar with the first part, but many of us are unaware that there is a second part to it, and I believe it's this second part of the prayer that reflects what recovery is all about. So if you would all please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. What we're focusing on is alcoholism is definitely a baffling malady to understand. And we see the analogy in the Big Book as the jaywalker, but I use another analogy, which is a comparison to a person who has an allergy to bee stings. So let's say I'm allergic to bee stings, and my neighbor is a beekeeper. And every day, at least once a day, I go into his backyard with a baseball bat and I hit the hives as hard as I can. And every day I get stung, and every day I either have to use an EpiPen or be taken to the hospital because my allergic reaction to bee stings is that my throat closes up and I can't breathe. So is my real problem that I'm allergic to bees, or that I act insanely and I keep going to where the bees are and doing something that I know will cause me to get stung? You see, if you see this bee analogy as the same as alcoholism, then you can see what the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous promises us, and that is that being recovered is possible. So, for example, for bee stings, I will never be cured of having the allergic reaction of my throat closing if I get stung, but I can recover from the obsession of going over to my neighbor's yard in order to get stung. So for alcoholism, I can never be cured of having the allergic reaction to alcohol, but I can be recovered of the obsession that keeps telling me that it's okay for me to do it. And that makes me never stop thinking about wanting to. So the best place we start for this, again, is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, in case you're not sure, or you might have a misconception, the big book is a book of instructions on how to work the 12 steps. And the 12 steps are the set of instructions on how to get rid of the things that are blocking us off from our higher power, how to get connected to God, and how to stay surrendered from alcohol making my life unmanageable. So merely reading the big book, however, and I mean, I read this big book many times, but merely reading it is useless. I mean, just reading it. You get a lot of really good information, but you can't learn how to play the piano, tap dance, cook, or live spiritually by just reading the book. You need to actually practice, 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 and do the things that the big book is talking about doing. So, because we're going to be doing a lot of work directly from the big book, the first thing I typically do is do a very high level overview of what's actually in the book. It's kind of like a cliff note version, the big book high level overview, or it's like a speed date. We're going to go through it very, very quickly. And the first thing that we're going to look at from the big book is the cover page. And the cover page states that this is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So the next question that's begging to be answered is, well, what is the definition of recovered? What do we mean by recovered? One definition is the problem is removed. I do not have to make the choice whether I drink alcohol or not, because I don't even think of drinking it. I automatically turn to God instead of alcohol when I'm upset. Alcohol is no longer an option to solve any of my problems. Selfishness and self-centeredness are gone, and I'm no longer angry, fearful, or harmful. My old destructive ways of thinking and acting have been replaced by new and peaceful ones. Now, I don't get involved in the argument that we will hear, and you've probably heard, you may have even participated in it, as to whether it's recovering or recovered. I haven't really seen the term recovering in the book, but I have seen the term recovered many times. So when we get into looking at another definition, it's in the 10th step promise, which is on page 84 of the big book. And this has become a way of life. And this 10th step promise is that we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it all. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It doesn't exist for us. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. That's our experience. And that's how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, another definition is on page 27, which defines recovered as ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. And then we look again in the appendix under the spiritual experience, which defines recovered as being a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism, has manifested itself among us in many different forms. So again, we're talking about recovered. We're not talking about recovering. We're talking about this is how we become recovered. So if we go to the forward to the first edition, it states that we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. And then it later goes on to say the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. However, the desire to stop drinking is not the only requirement to become recovered. There's other things involved, such as being willing and actually doing everything that the big book says to do, which starts us off at Bill's story. And in Bill's story, we're focusing on the first step, and the first step is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. The doctor's opinion starts there and brings us into Bill's story. Bill's story, when we're reading Bill's story, it tells us about the way Bill drinks, and do I feel the way Bill feels, and am I as hopeless as Bill? And that brings us to the next chapter, which is there is a solution which describes the types of alcoholics. So when I think about myself, I'm not a moderate drinker. When it comes to alcohol, moderation is something I zoom right over on my way to excess. So I could say, well, maybe I'm a moderate eater. I don't really have too much of a problem moderating when it comes to following my nutritional intake. Um, so when I think about being a moderate drinker doesn't have any trouble at all giving it up. If they have a good reason, they can take it or leave it alone. They could say, no, thank you. I'm not in the mood right now. I'm absolutely fine. Now, when we talk about the hard drinker is someone who they may have the habit badly enough that can cause them some problems. It might cause them to die a few years before their time. But if a sufficiently strong reason presents itself, something like ill health, falling in love, a change of environment, or the doctor says, hey, if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die, this person can also stop or moderate, even though they may find it difficult or troublesome, and they might even need some medical attention. However, the real alcoholic is to the point where, like the woman in the music video, there was nothing that could make her stop. She doesn't care if the kids are waiting for them to pick her up from school. She just wants more. So the real alcoholic may start off as a moderate drinker, and they may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage in their drinking career, they begin to lose all control of their liquor consumption once they start to drink. So as a real alcoholic, I have one and only one solution, which is to work the steps as they're outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in order to connect to my higher power. So the next chapter then is more about alcoholism. I have no power, choice, or control once I lose these. I've lost all three. And page 34 gives us the definition of powerlessness, which is the utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. This is about how and why people relapse. And page 35 explains it. Page 35 explains it because they fail to enlarge their spiritual life. And this particular chapter gives us 3 examples. The first is Jim's story, which shows that I will drink due to circumstances that make me restless, irritable, and discontent. The second is the jaywalker, which shows me that negative consequences will not stop me. And the third is Fred's story, which shows me that I will drink even when nothing is wrong. If I start to think I can do this on my own, I become arrogant and think that it would be impossible for me to drink again. I need to find a way to not feel restless, irritable, and discontent. And I love it, again, going back to that example where the woman was sitting in that meeting where she was just kind of looking to the side. You could see the restlessness, the irritability, and the discontentment that was just in her body language. So what I've got to be able to do is think about and realize the consequences. And I have to believe that I need spiritual help to do this. The last sentence of this chapter on page 43 states that his defense must come from a higher power. So the next chapter, We Agnostics, is designed to take one more shot at convincing me that I need a higher power. Page 44 tells me I only have 2 choices: to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis. And these are not always easy alternatives to face. So in other words, do I want to die from this disease, or am I willing to do this work? I can only have 2 choices. And if I think I have any other options, I won't do the necessary work. And some of my old options were things like using willpower. Instead of drinking, I would smoke. Instead of drinking, I would eat, or I'd go on a diet, or I'd exercise. The list goes on and on and on. The big book's main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. This again is on page 45. Notice the word problem is singular. I only have one problem, and that problem is separation from God. Once that's fixed, everything falls into place. So once I'm connected to my higher power, I don't need to rely on my own power. I draw upon his. It's the same as flipping on a light switch on the wall and the light comes on. I don't have the power to illuminate anything, but I do have the power to connect and use what does. So that brings us to the first step in admitting my powerlessness. Now I'm at step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2 starts on page 46 and states, much to our relief, we discovered that we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. Before doing the steps, the only thing that made me feel like my problems did not matter was alcohol. Therefore, I can only accept God as the solution when alcohol or other things no longer work. So I'm going down the checklist. And when these things no longer work, the last thing I'm going to do is think about connecting to God by working the steps. So if I realize that my problem is lack of power, my solution is to get power. I don't have that power. If I did, I would have been able to stop drinking. I would have had the power to not be angry, fearful, or harmful. I needed to find a power outside of myself. And I was the one who decided what that power was. It didn't matter how big or small my definition was. All I had to do for step 2 was to honestly answer yes to the question, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, there is something greater than me that can solve my problem? There's nothing in step 2 about knowing the power. Just am I willing to believe that there is one? If I'm desperate enough in step 2, I become willing to believe. And am I, as I'm doing this work, I get to see there's always been a higher power. And unless I take credit and think that I'm the one that's performing those miracles. So if I see my powerlessness, step 2 is easy because I have nowhere else to go. Later on, after doing some of this work, I realized what's written on page 50 is true. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. And then the rest of this chapter is designed to give me more reasons to believe I need God. And page 52 describes the bedevilments, and this was me. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We could not control our emotional natures. We were preyed in misery and depression. We could not make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We could not seem to be of real help to other people. Now, these bedevilments come from an untreated spiritual malady. Before finding God, alcohol was the only thing that numbed these feelings. So again, these bedevilments come from an untreated spiritual malady. Before finding God, alcohol was the only thing that numbed these feelings. Every one of these bedevilments has a relapse underneath it. The unmanageability and the drinking are connected. And the 9th step promises are the exact opposite of these bedevilments. So as we get into the 9th step, as we're halfway through it, we start to see these promises. And then page 53 has one of the greatest lines in the entire book, and that is either God is everything or else he is nothing. If there is no God, then I don't stand a chance of ever being happy, healthy, or comfortable in my own skin. And next we get to the chapter, how it works. I must be convinced, which is on page 60. And I like to read this one thing that comes that I took out of what was it? Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age, page 161, because our history as AA is amazing. I mean, Roland Hazard had to go to see Carl Jung, and then he had to go get Ebby out of court, and then Ebby had to come to see Bill Wilson, and then Bill Wilson had to be in Akron and just had to get to Dr. Bob. It's such a set of coincidences. And when Bill was writing the 12 steps, he was running into some difficulty. So I'm going to just read a small portion that I extracted from Alcoholics Comes of Age on page 161, where it says, again, I must be convinced. And this is what Bill said. Finally, I started to write. I set out to draft more than 6 steps, which were the 6 precepts of the Oxford groups. How many more, I did not know. I relaxed and asked for guidance. With speed that was astonishing, considering my jangling emotions, I completed the first draft. It took perhaps half an hour. The words kept right on coming. When I reached a stopping point, I numbered the new steps. They added up to 12. Somehow this number seemed significant. Without any special rhyme or reason, I connected them with the 12 apostles. Feeling greatly relieved now, I commenced to reread the draft. And then that brings us back to the ABCs, which is A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought. So this chapter describes the actor who unsuccessfully is trying to run the whole show. It teaches me that even when my motives are good, I'm unable to run my life or anyone else's for that matter successfully because I'm trying to be in control. I'm doing everything based on my character defects, which always cause problems for me. So when we look at this quote from page 62, it's where it says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fears, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be heard. So we put ourselves there, and we're the ones, even though we're the actors, we're trying to take on the job as director. And one of the best lines of hope for a happy life is also on page 62, which states that so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. So to repeat that, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. If I believe this, then I know I am the only one who has to change. I don't have to wait for someone else to start behaving differently in order for me to recover or to be happy. If I'm the one causing my troubles because I'm reacting to a part of self-triggering character defects, then I'm the one who can learn to stop being the catalyst for my troubles. An important point of this on page 62 is that for the program to the important thing, the only reason to be in a 12-step program is to work on your own recovery. And 12-step recovery, as it states on page 62, is about freeing yourself from playing God. Exactly what it says. First of all, we had to quit playing God. So the interpretation of that is God is the director, the one who sets everything up and knows the complete story and the outcome. I'm the actor who is being told what to do. I know it's his story, and I say and do the things based on his cues. He's the father, the one who's all powerful and in charge. I'm the child, the one who's obedient, teachable, watched over, and taken care of. He's the principal, the main one. I'm his agent, the one acting on his behalf and telling everyone how great God is. So this chapter also promises me that I will get rid of the things that are blocking me off from my higher power. And the things that are making my life difficult in order to instead of just learning to deal with them. I'm going to see what those things are that are blocking me off from my higher power, which then brings me to step 3. Step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. This is only a decision. It's making the decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. When I did step 3, I didn't have the power to turn my will and my life over. Therefore, I only have the power in step 3 to make that decision. If I had the power to do that in step 3, we'd only have a 3-step program instead of a 12-step one. But all I'm doing in step 3 is making the decision to give my concept of a higher power a try. So once I make that decision, now I'm getting ready to actually do it. And that brings me to step 4, made a searching and fearless moral made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And remember that the word moral in step 4 means honest. It doesn't mean good or bad. Step 4 begins on page 64. And in his best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I just happen to have right here, in his best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Dr. Stephen Covey states that our view of ourselves is like the crazy mirror at the carnival. This describes exactly what step 4 has done. If I've been looking at the things in my life through the crazy mirror room at the carnival, how can I believe my interpretation of it? The inventories show me what my misconceptions were and what the real truth is. So I can now look at things through a clear glass. Now, step 4 is 4 inventories. It's a review of resentments, fears, and harms, which exclude and include our our sexual behavior and our sexual relationships. Then we get to step 5, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And that is the chapter into action. And step 5 is about just facing facts. It's not talking about our feelings, nor is this a psychiatry session. All we're looking for are the things that are blocking us off from our higher power. And the things that are blocking us off from our higher power are our character defects. So once we've identified and discussed those character defects, we're at step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And it's very short. It's basically asking the question, do I want my character defects removed? Which brings us to step 7. The main thing about step 7 is this is the step where I become a willing participant in my own recovery by letting God mold me into who he wants me to be. In step 1, we admitted we were powerless and that we desperately needed help. With step 7, we finally ask for that help, which is ongoing. God is removing those character defects. Now we're starting to look at making restitution, starting with step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Because I had done steps 1 through 7 correctly, I was now a little less selfish, self-seeking, and self-centered. As a result of this, I began to realize that the things that I had done in the past had negative consequences for others, and now I really wanted to clean that up. So I made the list. All I do in step 8 is made a list. Where do I get those names? I go back to my 4th step inventories, and I have the list of names of the people that I had resentments towards and the people that I had harmed. So there I have those lists. We don't burn our inventories. We use those inventories to make our list of all the persons we've harmed. That brings us to step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is the step where we really start to realize how powerful God is and how he orchestrates everything if we can just stay out of the way. We make restitution, except for maybe a few where it would cause more harm. And that's where we make those direct amends. And so many times God will just arrange the circumstances so that the person will just show up. And I've seen that happen on many instances. So, and then we go to step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And this is where we really start to experience living light. That's why it says continue to take personal inventory. Once we get to step 9, we've taken care of cleaning up the past, and we're continuing to live this process.
So step 10 is the exact moment when I'm angry, worried, afraid, or about to harm someone or have harmed someone. And then I immediately go back and I do steps 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 5. If I'm upset, I immediately do a resentment inventory and stop being angry. If I'm worried or afraid, I immediately do a fear inventory and stop being frightened. If I'm about to harm someone or am harming someone, I immediately do a harm inventory and stop hurting another person. And then I move on to step 6. Do I want that character defect that I just reacted to removed? If yes, I do step 7 and I ask God to remove the defect and teach me how to be the opposite. And then I act as if someone who has those character assets. If I've harmed someone, I become willing to make amends in step 8, and then I do a step 9. If an apology is needed, I make it. Whether or not the apology is necessary, I make plans on how I'm going to amend my ways in the future so that I don't repeat these same negative behaviors. Then I do a step 5. I pick up the phone, I call my sponsor or a friend, and I just say, I was just jealous or mean spirited. I don't have to go into detail because the word resentment comes from the word sentori, meaning to feel. So you put re in front of it, it means to feel again. So if someone did me a wrong, I can get rid of the negative feelings immediately by doing a step 10, or I can carry it around with me and keep re-feeling it. Then every time I think about the situation or talk about it, the other person becomes more wrong. I become righter, and then I have a justified resentment. As a result, I feel tense, upset, horrible, maybe even wanting to drink. Then when there's another wrong, either by this person or someone else, all the wrongs become bigger than they actually are. The big book tells me how to get rid of these negative feelings before they block me off from my higher power. And that's by doing step 10 immediately. By doing step 10 often, I learn many valuable lessons. The main one being that God is the one who removes my character defects, but only when he thinks I've learned enough and practiced the opposite enough that he removes the defect, and then it'll be replaced by the proper thing. So in step 10, I learned to be grateful for everything that's happened in my life, even the things I don't like. I learned that everything that happens to me is allowed by my higher power, either to teach me something I need to learn or to protect me from something later on. I learn in step 10, my process is only for me. Whatever anyone else does or whatever happens to them has absolutely nothing to do with me. I can share in another person's joy and help if necessary, but there's nothing I need on the outside to make me feel okay on the inside. And there's nothing on the outside that can make me feel bad unless I internalize it and carry it with me. So I learn in step 10 how powerful God is and really how great he is at teaching me the things that I learned. And also that God has a great sense of humor. So by doing step 10s often, the 10-step promise that's indicated on the bottom of page 84 comes true. I stop fighting anyone or anything, even alcohol. I was put in a place of neutrality, safe and protected, and the obsession was lifted, so my problem was removed. The minute I realized how magnificent that my higher power was, it brought me straight into step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 11 is where I actually carry out the decision I made in step 3 to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I'm now more willing to have God run at every aspect of my life. I learned based on my experience with the previous 10 steps, anything God has in store for me is better than anything I could plan for myself. So my prayer life changes in step 11. I stop telling God what he should do And instead, I really only have two prayers. One is thank you. I'm always expressing my appreciation and my gratitude to God, which keeps me in that constant state of gratitude. And the second prayer is please tell me what you want me to do today and give me the strength to carry that out. The instructions for step 11 are on page 86, and they tell me that when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. I review my day without beating myself up. I'm looking for anything I might have missed doing a step 10 on, and I'm looking for anything that needs to be corrected, and more importantly, what lessons I need to learn that day. The instructions also state on awakening, we think about the 24 hours ahead. Based on what I found out the night before, I make plans on how I'm going to make any needed corrections. Additionally, I make plans on how I'm going to incorporate any lessons I learned yesterday into what I'm going to do today. And the last part of the instructions on 87 and 88 tell me what to do to stay connected to my higher power and constantly look for guidance and inspiration throughout the day. And it states, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We're then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We don't tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. And that then brings us to step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So the chapter working with others is all about step 12. And again, it's talking about having a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So a spiritual awakening is meaning that my way of thinking and acting have dramatically changed for the better. I know there's a God personal to me who loves me and is always there for me and only wants the best for me. The knowledge of the constant presence, guidance, and love of my higher power is the most important thing in my life without exception. Step 12 then states that we carry this message to alcoholics. The message here is if you're an alcoholic, there is a way out of all this misery. You just have to do exactly what it states to do in the first 164 pages of the big book, and you'll never drink again, nor will you ever feel as bad as you do right now. Step 12 also states, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And the principles themselves are honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, self-discipline, love, perseverance, spiritual awareness, and service, unity, and trust. So that is the very, very high level overview. And I know it was like taking a drink from a fire hose. Okay, so what I want to do now is we're going to actually start on the step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So that we're basically starting step 1. And you know, one of the things that I have as an activity for step 1 is in the workbook that some of you have, some of you may not, but it's a free download, and you can download these forms. But in looking at unmanageability, there are these questions, and this unmanageability questionnaire is in the workbook. It actually starts on page 68, but on page 69 in the workbook itself, I like to talk about this unmanageability, because this unmanageability questionnaire addresses all of the different areas in our life and ways that these bedevilments are coming out in our lives. So it basically talks about, and you can actually take this questionnaire, but I want to spend the rest of today's time just going over the questionnaire itself, because this is going to be your homework for next week, to really get you thinking about the first step. Because it starts off with it's got these 14 questions, but then it's broken down into some other subcategories. So the first one, of course, is, am I generally restless, irritable, which means I'm easily annoyed, and discontented, which means I'm never satisfied. And then, do I experience these feelings often? Do I feel like I never belong, or that I'm not a part of, or even in the program? I still feel like I'm an outsider. Am I usually uncomfortable in my own skin? Do I experience an ongoing sense of sadness? Do I often feel like something is missing? Does there always seem to be the same thing bothering me? It's happening over and over and over again. Can I easily solve a problem? Or does the problem linger for months, even years? So that's just under question 1. Then question 2, again, another one of those bedevilments. Am I having trouble managing my personal relationships? And some of the subcategories are, do I take care of others too much, to the point where I neglect to do the things I need to do to take care of myself? Is there anyone in my life that dominates my thoughts, my actions, or how I feel? Is there anyone in my life who is controlling me through their actions? Do I snap at people or talk harshly? Do I find I disagree with most people? Do I always want things my own way? Is there a relationship that ended that I refuse to give up on? If yes, do I keep trying to find ways to contact or see this person? Am I happy with the way things are in my current relationship? Am I happy with who I am and how I act in my current relationship? Do I need to end the relationship I am now in, but am afraid to do so? And then there's a spot to list the names of people close to you and evaluate how you're getting along with these people. And again, this is like your own self analysis. Is there a common theme regarding the problems I have with people around me? If the answer to that is yes, what is that common thread? And then question 3 is, am I having trouble controlling my emotional nature? Are most of my days best described as emotionally up and down? Do I feel that if I do what someone else wants me to do, they will act differently or treat me better? If yes, do I see a way out? And then think about listing 5 or 6 emotions like anger, love, fear, guilt, shame, excitement, jealousy, envy, greed, lust, and then answer the following questions. When I have this emotion, what do I do? What do I say? How do I behave? Do I have the ability to get over it without harming myself or others? Am I quick to criticize with biting or sarcastic tongue? Do I become silent and not talk to anybody for hours, days, weeks? Do I stuff my anger? Is my health affected by this emotion? So that's number 3. Am I having trouble controlling my emotional nature? Then number 4 is, am I prey to misery and depression? And then on the form, there's areas to list in your life where you're unhappy or things that make you depressed. Does misery show up when you don't want it to? Do other people cause misery in your life? How much of any given month are you depressed? Do you withdraw or go into hiding? Would you rather sleep all day than show up for life? So that was number 4. Am I prey to misery and depression? Now, this is not where we're talking about a clinical depression, where someone has a medical condition. We're just talking about normal, everyday stuff. Number 5 is, am I having a trouble making a living? Are there major areas in my life? Are the major areas of my life in balance? In other words, how is my life going? Is there balance? List examples of your experiences in the following areas: relationships, marriage or dating, getting ahead, finances, including credit cards, education, spiritual health, physical health, recreation. Am I overweight? Am I able to get or keep a job? Have I had a routine medical checkup recently? So all of those things you want to look at, yes or no. Are they balanced or not? Do you enjoy your job? Do you give an honest day's work for an honest day's pay? Then question number 6, do I feel useless and how do I manage this? Do I ask myself, why am I living anyway? When I try to help people, do they take advantage of me? Do I feel like a martyr or a victim? Do I know who I am? Do I feel I can be of help? Do I have a worthwhile goal that I'm working towards? Then think about examples of how you experience the feelings of uselessness, and then think of some examples from your own experience as how you feel useful. And then number 7 is, how do I manage fear? What are some of the fears that you're experiencing? How do you act when you're afraid? With each fear, ask yourself if it's based on reality, and if it is it the result of self-reliance instead of God reliance? Do the same fears keep coming up again and again for you? And then number 8 is, am I unhappy? When I say that I'm doing well, do I know deep down inside that I'm lying? Could I be described as positive and upbeat? What makes me happy? Are these things that should make me happy? And then number 9, am I of help to other people? When was the last time I brought someone new to a meeting? Do I go to meetings with the intention of helping someone else? Are most of the things I do done with some ulterior motive? Do I go that extra mile to help someone in need? Do I give my number on phone lists to newcomers? And do I take newcomers' numbers? Do I reach out to someone in need or in pain, either in the program or outside of the program, and expect nothing in return? And then number 10, though, this is a biggie. Do I think I know what's best for everyone? Do I believe that everybody, including myself, would be pleased, and that life would be wonderful if only everyone would do as I say? Do I spend a lot of time getting frustrated when others do not behave the way I think they should? Do I find myself at odds with people because I think I know how they should live and what they should do? Does everything have to be my way? Is there anyone that I should refuse to forgive? And then number 11, am I driven by fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity? Do I often wonder why I do what I know I should not be doing and do not do what I know I should be doing? Do I feel sorry for myself? Do I feel people should be doing more for me, or that I should have more than I have? Do I think the worst will always happen? If yes, is this based on experience or just my own thinking? Do I have trouble showing up on time? Although I may not currently be drinking, do I have other addictions, other areas in my life that are out of balance or out of control? And then number 12, am I an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually do not think so? Do friends and relatives sometimes say that I'm selfish, or even though I don't agree? Do I end relationships only because the other person does not act the way I think they should? Am I a team player? Do I spend most of the time thinking of myself instead of thinking what I can do for others? Is my motto, what's in it for me? Do I exhibit signs or participate in road rage? There's a biggie, especially those of us in New Jersey. Would other drivers consider me considerate? Do I pay my own way? Do I take responsibility for my actions and words? And then number 13, am I leading a double life? Do I present one personality to the outer world because I think this is how others want me to be? Am I under constant fear and tension because of this, worrying that I may be found out? Am I lying to or keeping something from my sponsor, spiritual advisor, or recovery network? Do I usually do what I say and say what I do? Do I pretend to be in recovery at meetings? Am I involved in relationships, romantic or illegal, that I should not be? Do I expect others to do things that I will not do for myself? And the last one, am I like a tornado roaring through the lives of others? Do I have a habit of breaking hearts, sabotaging sweet relationships, and uprooting affections? Have I avoided making amends to my family and those closest to me? So if you answer yes to any of these questions, it's an indication of unmanageability. The more yeses you have, the more areas of unmanageability you have. So this is a homework assignment for next week, where we're really going to start looking at the first step. And I know I took that right up to the wire.
Thank you so much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed the workshop, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And now, please join me in our closing prayer, which is St. Faustina's prayer for mercy. Eternal God, in whom mercy is endless and the treasury of compassion inexhaustible, look kindly upon us and increase your mercy in us, that in difficult moments we might not despair nor become despondent, but with great confidence submit ourselves to your holy will, which is love and mercy itself. Amen.